Yeah, there's 3 minutes left. Very good. Cool. If you have some questions while I was walking around, so Chelsea, you actually ask yours first.
So my question was, with the teacher interview and the scholar interview questions on the note-taking template, if directors were allowed to edit those questions based off of their focus areas, and then if so, how is that going to get changed in the document for participants?
Yeah. So it's my understanding that when their teacher and scholar questions are made after a pre-interview, they are supposed to be sent to me, in which I will, one, make the survey monkeys for you guys, and then two, look at your participant guide, and then change that for you. So you have an option there of one, if you don't trust me in terms of participant guide, just to have your participants make sure you use the survey monkey, just like we did a few years ago. And then otherwise, I'm going to have a Blackboard party every Sunday just to look at everyone's site and make sure that everyone's up to speed. So that was it. But
the 2 focus areas we choose, are they supposed to be the broad buckets, or are we supposed to like get more specific with something that falls under the broad bucket?
good. And so yeah, you would choose the broad bucket, and then when you do your specific asks of the team, you would have them focus on some of those more specific things. Yeah, good question.
So like how specific and how many? Like there are several possibles that align. Like is that director discretion? Is that facilitator says too much, too little?
Yeah.
Like how do we gauge how specific?
When you look at those, it's like those could be focus areas by themselves. So I recommend you only choose one, just to, when you look at an ISR team, like what are they actually capable of? So it's like if you're looking at like teaching and learning, you want them to look at differentiation and execution. That's something that they're just going to focus on for that day, instead of like giving them a lot of things we're just saying. So I would recommend one. If you can make a case for more than one, I'd like to hear it. But
because the team splits across the 2, so when they observe, they're looking for just that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I looked at the collaborative planning, I saw that one of the optional focus areas is culture of excellence.
Yeah.
And when I went to look at the questions that teachers and scholars would be asked under collaborative planning, I didn't see any questions for teachers and scholars around culture, but rather around the vertical and horizontal planning process.
Yeah, culture of excellence was one of the harder ones for me to actually place these, because you could make it in terms of like assessment and rigor for there, or like written curriculum. It could be more so like what are the expectations that we should be doing in class, but which also could relate into planning. For one like that, for culture of excellence, I would want a more explicit direction of what ISR teams should actually be looking for on that. And so when I looked at that focus area last year, a lot of it was one of expectations, but also the rigor that you saw in classes. So it could have gone in a lot of these ways. And so it was one of those I just had to place somewhere, and yeah.
So we can tweak those questions in the collaborative planning.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Candice, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the focus area. Is it necessary that ops teams have the same focus area?
No, they'll have different ones. They still have the same 6 to choose from last year. It was like satisfied customers, like healthy learning environments, full house. I forget the last 3, but they've already been choosing theirs for the past couple weeks.
So I'm just curious about like if there's been any thought around norming on the new observation tool and what that conversation's gonna look like with directors, because I know like we were just on an email chain today as the primary team that even within the primary group we're not normed, let alone across multiple.
Yeah, and so when I talked to MDs about this, there were some comments of like, shouldn't the ISR process kind of lend itself to norming the observation forum? But we did see some challenges in that because what if you have a very late ISR and it takes that long for you guys to actually get that norming process? Or 2, it's like, if that's the whole focus of it, we do see like that laser focus could be hindered in terms of what campuses should be working on. And so I know there is professional development around norming the observation forum, but it works outside of the ISR process.
So when we're looking at scores that may look very different than what that on-campus director is going to be potentially at, what is kind of your talking point around like it being potentially lower, significantly? I mean, I think sometimes ISR is inherently
is the communication we're giving to campuses around those low scores that are going to happen during the observation forum? And then two, it's like based on the trends that we get from ISRs, what can we actually say about those? And so I think that comes also from the follow-up from ISRs. So after we get the observation data, I do want to roll that up, show it to the rest of the network, kind of see like, hey, where are we going with this? As well as come back with the MD and ask like, hey, based off what observations are going on in your school, do you think this ties in well with observations that we've made here today at ISRQ? So I think that's a really good point. I do want to mark that down, just because, yeah, with that new process, it wasn't something that I wanted to make completely aligned to the ISR process, but I know it's something that we're going to affect because we do ISR observations still with the ISR form.
Can I add one
Go ahead.
thing? I think also it might be helpful if we all, as facilitators, encourage our teams when they're filling out the forms, like make sure everyone writes really detailed comments. Because oftentimes some of us write really detailed comments, some of us like maybe don't during ISRs, but I think that might lend itself to giving some clarity when the leadership team of the campus is looking at that feedback, even if the numbers look different than what they're used to, at least it's very detailed suggestions and like, this is why I gave this score. That could lend some clarity there as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Misha. Yeah.
Under requests, ISR team requests, if a school team wanted to give just like some sort of a form that they've been using when they go do classroom walkthroughs, if it's something quick, can we attach that? I can't remember if I saw that.
Yep, definitely. I think it comes with when you do your meetings all together, kind of thinking about what are the data, what are the documents that you want to lend to teams. I think a lot of teams actually did that last year, and that was completely fine. We just did observations with that form, as well as did the ISR I-10 forms. Did you guys know?
Yeah, I'd love to interject real quick. First, thank you so much for coming to this. I wanted to, for some of you that may be facilitators for the first or second or third time, you know, and some of you might be new to the process. I know a couple of you are. I wanted to just kind of semi-answer kind of the question that Kristen had in this, right? And kind of like how the our ISR process kind of worked back in the day. So, you know, when I joined Uplift, this is my 6th year, so, you know, just 5.5 years ago, one of the thoughts that I had was if we had an ISR process, could this be the thing that could allow for more what I would consider, there were kind of like 3 things I was hoping to get out of it. And one of them was an ability to give a director really good snapshot feedback of the day. The second one was we were introducing these positions called managing directors, and I know a lot of you work very closely with all of them. What would it look like for them to have a snapshot to help shape their feedback and support of directors, because that's a new role. That was a new role back then. And then the third was to kind of standardize, and for those of you who were here back then, we did have like a funky observation tool that we rolled out. And that observation tool has evolved minorly until this point where there has been a complete kind of overhaul of the observation form. And that's really just based on the rigorous reflection that came from many of you, but also from what we learned from the probably 50,000 plus formal and coaching observations that we've done in our previous school over the last 4 years. So, you know, what I'm really excited about is really 2 things with this process, right, that all of you are going to help facilitate. One is like, we are rolling out a new tool. That tool is going to be used in coaching and observation conversations times every teacher we have in our network. And this group does have the opportunity to really have some rich discussions about that. And you're absolutely right, we're not going to all come in normal. But next year this time, and the year after this time, I think we're going to be in kind of the same space where we were very familiar with the old form last year. And then 2, you know, going back to kind of the 4 buckets of choice, you know, just this alignment toward IB. No longer do we need to, well, I think directors appreciate the snapshot from the ISR, so do the MDs, but now we have this like internal internal mechanism to develop ourselves and each other through the lens of IB. And I think that's just a really exciting opportunity to kind of almost mirror the best we can certain aspects of the evaluation and authorization processes that all schools will go through over the course of the next few years. So, I just wanted to come down and say thank you, and also thank you to Gabe for kind of the legwork that he put in terms of kind of tweaking and rehauling parts of this. But, this first semester, I think, is critical for a couple of reasons, right? In primary, we now have 7 authorized primary schools in PYP, right? Middle schools, you all have 7 too. Our high schools are going to launch DP over the next few years, and I do think the purpose and the shift that we're going to see is going to naturally start with you all as the facilitating with this one. So I just wanted to shout you guys out. Thank you to Gabe for doing this. But great question, and let's keep pushing on these great questions because this is going to be a landmark year that's going to set the stage for the next few years of ISR-ishness. All right, I got to run to meeting 4, which I hope it's like, but thanks so much.
I want to keep it open just for any questions that are still on.
This isn't a question, more of just like something I've been thinking about doing that I think would help is knowing that it is teachers' first year with this new form and they're naturally very nervous for ISRs because they want to, do their best. Is asking all of the people who are participating to leave a positive note in the classroom they observe. I think that could be a good kind of norm across the ISRs.
I think that's like that. Anyone else? Okay, Nancy.
So I have a question. So given that these buckets are a little bit broad, are directors trying to set the ISR team up to narrow down or to focus in more on a specific element or a specific strand from these buckets?
Yeah.
For instance, if we're doing collaborative planning, on one page it says culture of excellence.
Yep.
But if the principal comes in and says, I really, really want you to analyze how effective our content team meetings are.
Yep.
And then the ISR team wants to go classroom and it's chaos. So ISR team thinks we want to focus and give some feedback on culture of excellence, but the director has said, I really, really want you to tell us how effective our content team meetings are. To what degree do we as the ISR team say like the highest leverage thing we can focus on is X, which may be different than Y? But again, that's different than what the leadership team is kind of.
Because we ran into that a few times last year when there were some focus areas that we came in and were like, there's something else that we should be getting feedback on. We're not sure how to do it.
Exactly.
And this is why facilitation is so important. When you have that pre-meeting, you kind of have to sell to the facilitator of that why we're actually focusing on this for the day. And so, when you're sitting down with your director and they're giving you a specific focus area, it's your job, one, to really deep dive into, hey, why did you choose this focus area? What were you working on beforehand? What are the challenges that you're seeing? And then what is focus specific asks for the team? The second hand thing is if they do choose to carry on to that focus area, we basically as an ISR team have to sit there and kind of okay, let's give feedback on what they've asked, but also keep this evidence in the Google Doc as needed. And so the hope is when they do their ND step back, they still see that evidence, but they still get the feedback of what they wanted at the beginning of the ISR.
So we don't shift based on what we think is an ISR team is the highest leverage.
Do you have something on that, Sophia?
Yeah, this is a really great question that we did encounter it a few times, and I think that it's almost, I would love, since we have so many directors here, to kind of get, I think we should open it up and ask, our sort of implicit agreement was, if we saw something that was really, troublesome, we would kind of pick somebody, and usually the facilitator would be hey, maybe this might be a conversation to have with the director, sort of
areas we felt were very high leverage, and we agreed as a team, like deviating it off from those, like, under what circumstances would that be appropriate? So that we could get, 'cause I feel like for me, I'd be like, yes, like, if we have a blind spot, like, give me feedback on that.
Yeah.
But I think I would wanna ask them before your meeting, I guess.
I think the only caution then is like, I think we just have to be very mindful, like, those things that are really hard to observe, like, I don't know, I'm making a difference, Jake, but like, whenever this did happen, it tended to be something cultural, and I feel like that's something that's very hard to really quantify, especially like with the observation form. So I feel like as long as it's within like the realm of like something that like, as a team you can norm across versus like, I don't know if I'm being too vague or not, but like some of those like.
Yeah, it made sense because there's like, when I was facilitator last year and I had a meeting, it was to the point where I was talking to the director and they really wanted us to look at this focus area, but it was very hard to observe. And so it was kind of that push of like, hey, I know that you really want this to be the focus area for your ISR, but I'm just worried about the team and the ISR team of this type of feedback that you're going to get.
Or do they have the skill to even
Or yeah, do we have the
assess that?
skill? Is this really observable in one day? Like, great.
The other thing that would make me nervous about opening it up is I liked how efficient the ISRs were last year. The conversations were very pointed at answering specific questions, and I felt like better feedback was given to answer those questions, whereas in years past, you had this group of people that wanted to go in this direction, this group that wanted to go in this direction, and sometimes the feedback ended up being haphazard as a result.
Oh, yeah.
I think, and to add on to that too, I know that one of the things that felt different about last year's ISRs that felt really proactive and it was collaborative and helpful for campuses to plan versus in years past it was felt evaluative for the teams, both for the teachers and for the admin teams. And so I worry that unless it's a mutual decision, having an outside party say this is what you need to be focusing on because we saw these things might push that pendulum back in the evaluative stage, at least in the way that it's received, more so than it's intended.
But no, honestly, just really great question. But how's that sound right now? Like, what are your thoughts? I gotta bring it to you. I don't mind going.
Sounds like everybody has kind of different things on it, so.
Yeah.
And everybody it sounds like everybody wants something different. Like if somebody comes to my school, please be as critical as possible.
Sure.
And light me on fire because like I want that, but I don't think that that's true for everyone. So like I respect that and I want to like make sure that I'm aware of that as a facilitator. So, like that's understandable.
Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I just was gonna add, I mean, I don't facilitate at all, so unfortunately, I mean, I just get to see it all, but I think it's just making sure you're keeping the process, being faithful to the process, and being disciplined about facilitating the process with integrity. And so making sure that you don't give in to like the temptation to do what's easy or easier or most observable. And like if a campus really wants feedback about X, give it your best shot to give them feedback about X, even if something else is much more tempting to do. Like try to be very disciplined about the work that you committed to give that campus. And so I don't think it's someone's nature to not be disciplined, but I think it just makes the process more, just more robust if we try to like stick to the guidelines that you've established, as opposed to saying, hey, I saw this big red thing come our way. I want to tell you about it. I think you should try to stick as close to the process as possible.
Yeah, I think we also have to assume that some of those things that we might see as big red flags, like our school leaders already know about that, but they already kind of have a plan or they know where to go for help with that, so they're asking for something very specific because, yes, we have this, but I love the idea like what you shared of just grabbing them during lunch and saying, hey, this is what we're seeing, do you want us to look into this further?
We tend to do this anyways, like when we see something that like this worries us, so I'm just gonna have this conversation. Sometimes it does change the fabric of the ISR, sometimes it doesn't have to, sometimes it's just a one-off conversation. So it is really up to that facilitator director relationship. It's really important. Any other questions? But
Just have a clarifying question about how to read page 4. So underneath each of the 4 categories, I see 2015-16 focus areas.
Yep.
Then next to that, the possible specific asks.
Yeah.
And so when I read this the first go around, my understanding was that under the 2015-16 focus areas, that's where you were listing stuff that we as directors asked the ISR teams to look at last year, as opposed
opposed to the column right next to it where that's what you want directors to ask for feedback on this year. And twice I've heard the culture of excellence idea come up, but it's over in the left column, which I think, if I'm understanding right, refers to last year, so that actually isn't something that we would be asking ISR teams to look at this year. Is that correct?
It's my idea that I'm giving you the focus areas from last year, as well as specific asks that Ivy looks at as well. You're free to choose. If you choose collaborative planning and you want to choose culture of excellence, that's fine.
Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, because there's some still things that you want to talk about. Like, if you want to talk about like written curriculum, talk about checks of understanding as well as questioning. Like, I don't want to say like you can't ask that, but yeah. So, now this is during ISR, and I spent a lot of time on that just because that is the bunch of it. So after ISRs, you guys do get your feedback presentation, you get your Google Doc notes, and you get the teacher and scholar interviews afterwards. Afterwards, you have your campus step back with the MDs. And then honestly, down here, this is something that I'm actually excited about. This is something that I get developed throughout the year. It's more intentional and regular follow-up. So as I said, there's some points last year when we actually asked, like, hey, we're gonna do this ISR, we're gonna do this feedback, we're gonna get all these responses, but what happens to all of it? It kind of just sits on our Google Docs, or it sits kind of in this bank that we have here on Blackboard, but no one really comes back to it. So it's my hope that every month or quarterly, I do give you the trends of the ISRs, as well as observation data, as well as like, what are our teachers saying? What are our scholars saying around this? Just so it gives that transparent feel to the ISR process. And we can more help, like, we can actually target that, whether it is during like Winter Leadership Academy, and then afterwards in the second semester, or we just have an idea of like, oh, this campus did this, and they actually focus on this focus area. I had an idea of what I wanted to do there. Let's learn from that. Just so for the ones that have already gone through the process, they can give that wisdom to other campuses. But if you have any ideas about what you want intentional and regular follow-up to look like after ISRs, you can go and give that to me, because that is something that I'm going to own as well. So you can write down, talk to me. But yeah, so next steps, this is kind of the exit tickets and kind of the end of the session. Go ahead and go, if you have your computer, to the ISR Blackboard page. I had a lot of questions also of like, you're referring to a lot of things in the guide. Those are all uploaded for you. And so I made sure that all the documents that you got last year for the ISR, whether it be emails that you're gonna send to your staff, director guides, they've been updated for this year's process. Under Facilitator Director Materials, you're gonna download the fall 2016 Facilitator to Director email document. And my recommendation is you send the email to Facilitator Director pre-meeting at least 2 weeks prior to the school's ISR. And so on September 1st, we have 3 ISRs, and then I know what they are.
Grand middle school.
Okay, so not high school. So middle. So not.
It's Williams High. Williams High.
Williams High. Grand Middle.
Grand Below.
And Summit Primary.
I'll be there.
And so who are the 3 facilitators? Sophia, Monica, and Stephanie. Which means that you guys can go ahead and send your director pre-meeting email, just because it is 2 weeks out from that. For the rest of you, you can kind of look at that director email, see if it makes sense. Remember, it's written by me, so feel free to modify the language so you don't sound like me. I don't think I'm going to name on it.
Can I just ask a question about that?
Go ahead.
So, this is really nice because for most of you, most of the directors are here, but I am working with a new director who's not gonna be facilitating.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we assume that like this will be the first, I guess I'm just wondering for my pre-meeting, should I be prepared to like kind of walk him through like a lot of this?
Yes. Yes. And so when I did my facilitation pre-meetings, there's a point where they may have never seen the guide before.
Yeah.
So I had to walk them through kind of the process, as well as look at the template that I made, or that we made last year for directors. Be like, okay, you guys are going to present this at the end of the board meeting.
So for those of us facilitating for, let's say, like, new to Uplift directors, should there be some sort of table setting on, like, what is the ISR and what's the purpose of it? Or is that something that like, is that something that you can talk about, like, in interviews and stuff? I'm wondering.
What do you say to that? Right? I'll put it in the, yeah, it's a relationship building, so I'll put it in the hands of the facilitator. So, but you can use the gun. If you need me there, like Maya last year, she kept herself open. If you want me there for your facilitator pre-meeting, I'm completely fine with joining that.
And need we just send this to the director?
Just the director. And that's a good point. Like last year, they're like, can I bring my teams? And I'm like, no, I just want you to focus right now. Just on the director. Just the director. For the next 3 days of ISRs, like I said, September 1st, you have those three. September 12th, you have North Hills, Pinnacle, and Peak. And then Whitney, as you said, yours on 9/15. Also, thanks for your patience, Rick, with all of the calendar invites. You've seen that they've either been canceled or rescheduled or been re-updated. I'm working with Melissa, who's honestly just been a godsend this year, just to get all the invites down. We're probably going to get more changes, but right now, just thanks for all your patience with all the calendar invites so far. Go ahead. You're not you're just attending.
So I still got waiting for, still keep getting the new one. Oh, yeah. That's the one that. No, they just pop up again, that's why. I declined it.
I declined several too.
Got it.
Feel free to decline it.
So, okay, got it. I was just like, gotcha.
No, there is.
Like what we talked about. Yeah. I'm gonna put it up. Yours is gonna be on November 3rd. Melissa right now is she's in the middle of October. And then Jenna, you're facilitating Summit. But the most hold on. Like you can see the email. All right, guys. While you guys are doing this right now, I do have a last slide. Just thank you. I was told to do this. But yeah, if you guys if your ISR is not within 2 weeks away, you're free to pack up and leave if you need to. I just wanted to show you where all the documents are going to go. So for the rest of you, if you need to stay and ask questions, that's completely fine as well. But I do want to respect your time. We got out early, which is good. Other than that, thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you. I'll work with y'all the rest of the year. Got it?